Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Experts Interviews. I'm Art Petty. I'm the host. It's great to have you here. So, you're going to enjoy this interview with Christie Smith. Christie is one half of the authoring team of Christie Smith and Kelly Monahan for the new book, Essential: How Distributed Teams, Generative AI, and Global Shifts Are Creating a New Human Powered Leadership. This is a manifesto for the reinvention of leadership. I love the passion for this topic that comes through in Christie's words in the interview here and throughout the book. I really do recommend this book. I think it's a great senior leadership read, but I think it's good for anybody that's really thinking about pondering and has an ability to affect how leadership is practiced at any level in their organization. So enjoy this fun, fast-moving interview with Christie. So, Christy, it's great to connect with you here. I'm so excited to talk about your new book, and it's got a long subtitle, so I'm going to grab that. Essential is the name, which I love that name. How distributed teams, generative AI, and global shifts are creating a new human-powered leadership. There's so many cool concepts just in that title there. So, welcome. Great to have you here.
Art, it's such a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So, my perspective on the book is this reads like a manifesto. You and your co-author, Kelly, are calling for a revolution in how we lead. Do I have that right?
You nailed it. That's exactly what this is. We absolutely are living in unprecedented times. We need a manifesto. We need inspiration and we need direction. So we're really excited about the book, and you characterized it perfectly.
I don't think it could be a better time for this particular work with everything that's swirling around us in our world. So not only did I read it and come away with the impression that this is a manifesto, but I kind of put it into that category of Gary Hamel, who's someone I admire tremendously, who's long been beating the drum saying management must be reinvented. So here you are, leadership must be reinvented.
Well, what an honor to be mentioned in the same sentence as Gary. He is certainly an incredible force for humanity in the workplace, but he's also just what an incredible scholar and teacher.
No doubt about it. Yeah, an inspiration to so many. So let's start really with a core theme that comes through loud and clear early in the book and throughout. Leadership is failing. Those three words, that's a direct quote out of the book. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there have been so many shifts in the world that not only is leadership failing, it's really hard today. We are having seismic shifts from leaders being just profit driven and worried about product and customer to really being global citizens. With war in two areas around the world, the tensions globally that we're faced with today, the polarization, the socioeconomic and political conditions around the world, the rise of technology and innovation in technology, low trust rates, historic low trust rates in institutions and leaders, and low scores in employee engagement are all making leadership very difficult, but leaders aren't changing the way they're behaving. So that's why we start with that provocative sentence of leadership's failing.
You know, yeah, I get the impression, and you reinforce it, you and your co-author reinforce it. Leadership these days is complex, which is beyond
Mhm.
complicated, right? There's just no single simple way to get it right. Yet I think the phrase human powered leadership that comes through, of course, in the subtitle, but throughout the book, maybe that's kind of the, I don't know, the pivot point, the fulcrum, the focal point, whatever the right term is. So talk to us, what is human powered leadership?
Human powered leadership is what we define as really investing in humanity in the workplace. That it's no longer about the hero worship of leaders. We put so many leaders on a pedestal, and it's all about them. And we conflate that, brand is the leader themselves. The fact of the matter is, it's not about them, not about the leader anymore. It's about the people they lead. And so we really look at and do both a historical look, but also really look at these forces that I talked about earlier and the impact that it is having on employees
Mhm.
and our society at large. And because of that, employees are demanding different things from their leaders, and they're first and foremost demanding to be seen as human.
Mm. I think that echoes one of Gary's comments from, I believe, a video of his in that we have to design organizations fit for people.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think not only for people, but for the realities that they bring to work. I mean, I grew up at a time in business where you checked your humanity at the door. You
Yeah.
came to work, you were the role you were in, you were the competency that you delivered on and were an expert in, and you just ripped through an agenda to get to an outcome, right? That is no longer the case. And we've seen this in, evolving in the generations moving into the workplace. We saw it a little bit with Gen X. We saw it a lot with millennials. We're
Mhm.
seeing it more with Gen Z and Gen Alpha even more. And so this notion that people are showing up at work and putting blinders on to the rest of what they're dealing with in the world is simply ignorant. And leaders, while they've got to get work done, totally appreciate that. What we know is that when leaders invest in people and the humanity in their workforce and design work in a way that celebrates individual performance, individual missions, individual goals, and the roles and the capabilities that they bring to the table, well, those companies are performing 3 to 6 times more than companies that are not focused on that.
So has there been a study, or have you and your co-author partner done a study? Is there a causal relationship to this and financial outcomes? Can we go that strong yet, or is it still kind of that correlation?
No, there are many studies
Mhm.
that are out there and that we talk about in the book that correlate and are significantly tied to
Mhm.
performance when you have higher employee engagement, higher trust, when people are working toward in a purposeful environment, in a culture where the leader is constructing and architecting the team that so that every individual is playing to their strength, that
Mhm.
they feel engaged in the work and that the work is purposeful. Absolutely, there are numbers of study that supports this.
Yeah, what you're saying is command and control leadership dead, or should
Yep,
it be put?
it
I
should be
think it
to death.
but it should be put to death. Yeah.
Now, let me be really clear about that.
Yeah.
There is a role for leaders to make sure that the processes, the organizational structure,
Mhm.
the things that allow us to get work done, there needs to be guardrails there. There
Mhm.
is consequential roles in the marketplace in frontline workers who are working in oil fields or who are working construction, who are working in white collar roles that are really consequential to those individuals and to customers and ecosystem partners and clients in the environment. So we need to have structure in the way we work. That doesn't mean that we need autocrats in
Mhm.
work.
Mhm.
And so this move from, command and control, first of all, employees are not working in those environments. They're deciding to leave those kinds of environments. And secondly, it is a failed strategy.
So I'm a big believer in, macro trends versus micro movements. In the here and now, it feels a little bit like autocracy is swinging back, the pendulum is swinging, and the return to work mandates, which I think flies in the face of, I grew up in leading virtual companies and being a virtual employee, so I don't understand the return to work yet. Are we seeing a little bit of a momentary pendulum shift in the direction opposite where you and your co-author believe we need to go?
I think we're absolutely seeing a pendulum shift, and I think it will be short-lived. I think that, listen, there is there are some really good business reasons for people to return to office. I
Hmm.
get that. Does it need to be everyone in the office? Probably not, right? I think that the blanket mandates of return to office and not really examining the critical segments in your workplace that need to be in the office versus don't need to be in the office, that work isn't being done,
Hmm.
right? So I think this is a failure of imagination, right?
I love that
How
phrase.
do we
Mhm.
structure work in a way that allows for predictability and flexibility in the workforce and when they come to work, when they don't, who needs to be at work and why, and how do we structure the work that when they're at work, they're actually engaged with the team and with each other in the work that needs to get done, right? I mean, one of the most frightening statistics that I've seen is, 1 in 5 employees at work feel lonely.
Oh.
When you think about the burnout rates, 57% of all employees worldwide say that they've experienced burnout and
Mhm.
mental health issues in the last, year. And when you look at, leaders, 53% of managers are feeling burnt out. And so that has a direct impact on if you are layering onto that unstructured work,
Mhm.
lack of direction, lack of engagement, and these high rates of mental health issues, well, you're not going to get the best from your people if you aren't investing in their workplace, the work itself,
Mhm.
tying it to purpose and tying it to engagement.
So well said. In the knock that we can't innovate and we can't problem solve as effectively if we're not co-located, I find to be baloney. I work with clients and organizations all over the place that are doing amazing jobs of that, and they're adjusting and adapting. And sure, no doubt about it, sometimes it just pays to be co-located. But yeah, I think we have a
Yeah,
little bit of maturing to do here.
Yeah, I think, I think this is emblematic of a polarized world that we live in today. It's
Mhm.
either everybody at work or nobody at work.
Right, right.
There is this, and the rhetoric around that I think is very damaging.
Mhm.
What we are taking away from leaders and from employees is, the ability, the agency to design work for greatest outcome,
Mhm.
greatest productivity,
Right.
greatest impact on clients, greatest impact on customers. We're not taking the time, and time is a real important factor here.
Mhm.
We're not taking the time to step back and really look at our workforce in a meaningful way to say, how do we construct the work for greatest outcome? And in the process, how do we create a workplace where people feel fulfilled, connected, linked to purpose and values of their organization?
Am I allowed to kind of pump my fist in a cheer on that statement?
Heck yes, but please.
I love that. By the way, I so want to teach this book, and I so want to bring this book to my workshop programs with senior leaders and middle managers and everybody. So
Let's do
You and
it.
Kelly have created an amazing resource for all of
Oh,
us
you're
here.
sweet. Thank
So,
you.
to kind of cap that leadership is failing, and you say in the book, a new way is required, one that rejects much of the conventional and outdated wisdom of the last 50 years. Just nice capstone. But I do have a question. How
Mhm.
does this drive for human-powered leadership play in an AI-centric world, or at least seemingly the one we're becoming? How does it play?
Yeah, well, we talk about this at length in the book, right? The reality is artificial intelligence and innovations around technology are going to disrupt the way work gets done.
Hmm.
Stop. But that doesn't mean there isn't human requirement,
Hmm.
right?
Thank goodness.
A artificial, yeah, artificial intelligence, in order for it to be the promise, fulfill the promise that we talk about, we need human intelligence to sit aside it. So it means a new set of skills, a new set of competencies that
Mm-hmm.
are able to do things like um, analyze what's being said, challenge what AI is coming out with, look at the context in which the application of AI will impact either customers or workers themselves. We need governance model. We need security models around AI, right? And that is uniquely human.
Mm.
We also have to realize that in an age of AI, that AI is backward looking.
Mm. Yeah.
And it's being fed historical data.
Right.
And that data is somewhat biased, right?
Mhm.
And so for us to believe naively that everything that comes from AI is correct or going to be an advancement, that's foolish, right? We need that human intervention with the technology. Now, what we also talk about is that the rise of AI and the need for human intelligence is giving rise to a new category of worker. We have talked about historically white collar and blue collar workers. We've identified in our research and in the book a category that we call gray collar workers,
Mm.
which those workers who are now being demanding technology as an interface to the work that they get done. So if you think about when you think about your car and the evolution of the car itself, it's a
That
computer.
computer on wheels.
It's a computer on wheels, exactly. And so when you take it in to get serviced, that mechanic now needs to understand the software of how that car runs. They need to be able to fix it. They need to be able to do diagnostics on it. So that mechanic is no longer a blue collar worker. That person is a gray collar worker.
I lived this in real time yesterday. Since I live at a lake, we have a truck. So took the truck
Yeah,
in. They had
yeah,
to update the software for the anti-lock brake system. Yeah. It's like,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
I used to be able to do my own brakes, not anymore.
That's exactly right. Conversely, if you look at white collar workers, right, there is a demand of white collar workers to understand the technology. We need to upskill and reskill our white collar workers to understand the technology
Mm.
as it relates to how a product is done, how a process is run in in an industry. If you look at how we make drugs or you look at an oil and gas company, white collar workers are having to understand the technology that produces those things in a much more intimate way now, and therefore they become a mix in that gray collar worker. What's really interesting, and we saw this in our research, is that 100% of all leaders that we talked to globally said they know they need to do something fundamentally different when it comes to innovation around AI or technology.
Mhm.
Only 25% are thinking of doing something about it.
Well, and by the same token, don't they need to do something fundamentally different in the development of their people and the development of
100%.
people's skills? I mean, you and Kelly say that there's a war. We've entered a war for skills. I love
That's
that.
exactly right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we've entered a war for access to skills.
Uh-huh.
And that's really, really important because, we know McKinsey talked about the war for talent, in the
Yeah,
90s.
sure.
We're really talking about an access, not an acquisition. So the access of skills that are rapidly changing. The half-life of skills is shortening and shortening and shortening because of technological innovations, because of this marriage between white and blue collar workers to gray collar workers. Therefore, organizations need to be 100% focused on upskilling and reskilling their people, on learning and development. But it's not happening. Going back to the original statement in the book where leadership is failing, if your calendar is anything like mine, Art, it is, used to be, I don't live this way anymore, back to back to back to back to back meetings. And there's no white space. There's no white space to think, to learn, to develop. There's not a premium on development. everything that employees are being asked to do today is side a desk in terms of learning AI, building their own skills. It's not invested upon in the culture and everyday activity.
Mhm. Yeah, I recall those days. I don't regret not being a part of that anymore. And so many
Yeah.
of my clients live the same way. You know, a simple question, when do you find time to think?
Yeah.
To really think deeply? And many of them will admit, honestly, I don't. Maybe
Yeah.
at the weekend, whatever it happens to be at the gym. So, um,
Well, I think this is, if I just might, I
yeah.
think that this is something that, we talk a lot about resilience of leaders.
Hmm.
And frankly, our bias is that the more productive leaders are, even in their off time,
Hmm.
how many leaders do you know are running marathons or doing some sort of athletic endeavor or
Hmm.
have, families in there, but
Sure.
there's never time. They're not taking time to just be quiet, to just make space for thinking,
Hmm.
right? Everything's a have to do, right?
It's
And
that
so
it's in that
part,
space that so many great things happen, right? We solve
yeah,
problems, we generate ideas, we find a way forward, we calm ourselves. So yeah, yeah, so such a critical perspective. I do have a question. So the gray collar leader, is that analogous to or similar to what Drucker was talking about in Knowledge Workers way back in the 2000s when he was still with us and writing?
yeah. I mean, I think it's analogous. I don't think Drucker totally hit the point.
Okay.
And that's no fault of his because since that time, think about how technology has just skyrocketed,
Mhm.
right? So I think we are living in, and candidly, I think it's not just the technology boom, but it's the complexity of all those things I talked about, making leadership hard,
Mhm.
that really demands, turbocharging or a slightly different look with a sense of urgency at leadership that we talk about in the book.
Yeah, I think Drucker was prescient, but you're right. Yeah, he was
Yes.
also a person of his times, right? And those
Yeah.
times have changed. So, all
Yeah.
right. So, in the book, you and Kelly ask a key question. How can leaders overhaul decades of entrenched business practices to pave the way for a leadership paradigm that truly reflects the essence of business? That's one powerful question. So,
Yeah.
how can they? How can they overhaul this?
Yeah. So we really talk about in the book, we build a roadmap, a leadership flywheel, if you will,
I
for
love that, by the way. I love the use of the flywheel.
yeah, for leaders today, given all these complexities, and frankly, given the fact that employees are demanding more of
Mhm.
leaders. And that really is, they are demanding purpose, and that leaders' insides, companies' insides match their outsides.
Mhm.
They're demanding the agency we talked about. They're demanding well-being and connection, right? And they are voting whether to be part of a company based on those things and how they deliver on those things or not. And
Mhm.
freelancing is one of the fastest growing parts of our economy. So clearly, our younger generations are not afraid not to be part of the
Sure.
corporate machine.
Mhm.
So we really talk about, so how do you manage in this complex world? How do you lead in this complex world? Well, we start with the premise that we've all talked about for ages and still leaders are talking about, which is that notion, that baseline of emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
right? We have to be empathetic, we have to be compassionate, all of those things. And emotional intelligence is very important, but it is focused on you as an individual,
Mhm.
what your attributes are, what your proclivities are, how you score, right? Your own personal development. It doesn't make the leap to what we call as emotional maturity, which is in service of others.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if you're thinking about emotional intelligence, it's all about me. Emotional maturity is all about the people you lead. And we talk about, a couple of concepts in that flywheel that produce emotionally mature leaders. Number one is mindset,
Mhm.
which is suspension of self-interest. It is not about you, how much money you make, your performance, your power, the autocratic
Right.
nature that we talked about earlier. It is really a shifting of focus about your team. It's then the quality of being insatiably curious,
Mm.
taking the time, blowing out your calendar to have white space so that you can actually meet with your people in your team, whether that's face to face or on Zoom or Teams. It is taking the time to understand your employees, what motivates them, what challenges they're having. Are they dealing with a kid who has autism or ADHD, or parents who are aging and they have to take care of them, or some other family issue? Are they dealing with a health issue themselves, right? Being clear on the person you're sitting across from is not a set of
Do
competencies
you mean
only.
something as radical as really connecting with people? It's so
Exactly.
crazy.
What a crazy concept, right?
Yeah.
And part of that, capability of insatiable curiosity is contextual understanding
Hmm.
of the people on your team and what they're dealing with and how you can help them. So that's a second piece behaviorally, what needs to shift in leaders. Then that leads to, building exceptional cultures.
Hmm.
And building exceptional cultures on, the shoulders of those two previous things is really about how do you architect the work that needs to get done so that everybody is playing to their strengths. It's not to say, it's not Pollyanna saying everything you do, you're going to love. But what you do is purposeful, is linked to the purpose of the organization you chose to belong to. If it is meaningful to customers and clients, and I can see that through line.
Hmm.
If it is something that I feel like I'm not competing next to the guy next to me, I'm actually collaborating with the guy next to me, and that we're all going to win as a team. So building a culture that is really kind of based in and has a foundation of everyone winning is key. That then leads to, well, for everyone to win, we need to be able to invest in development of our people, of upskilling, reskilling, making sure they have the tools to be excellent. And
That last point is that always lights a fuse with me because the way we go about developing our people in organizations just seems wrong. Some of my friends do great LinkedIn learning courses, but if that's your total development plan, you're
yeah,
missing the boat. It's
yeah.
coaching, it's education, it's experience, it's time, it's mentoring, it's reinforcement, and so many of those other things. So I'm sorry that
You
topic.
have to use multiple
Yeah, yeah,
modalities
yeah.
and you have to invest in it, right? I mean, the organizations that some of the organizations that I've been a part of, it's a fraction. The learning and development folks get a fraction, I mean, little, and they're expected to educate the total humanity in their organization. That's insane.
Mhm.
Now, conversely, a company which, I'm exceptionally proud to be an alum of is Deloitte, where they bought Deloitte University at a time where it wasn't popular to build brick and mortar,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Deloitte University and the success of Deloitte University, not only for the consultants themselves and leaders themselves, but for their clients and customers, is exceptional. It is a statement of this is what we value.
It's a commitment, right? It really is. I have to rewind for a second. You have a great section in the book on purpose and the power of purpose. Yet I encourage everyone who's watching and listening to this to observe not only their own organization, but the ones that they frequent and seek to identify that sense of purpose. In a simple comparison contrast, in the last recent period, I had experience at a major auto dealership doing some repair work, and you got the impression that it was a group of zombies.
Mm.
And I talk with people. I observe the cultures. I engage. There was no energy. There was no focus. You just walk away. It's like, they don't have the environment right. I don't feel a sense of purpose. And then another contrast is not as a client, but as a customer of the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah. Great example.
Everyone, including the individuals who are pointing you to the elevators, making your appointments, and of course, all of the medical practitioners, they exude that sense of purpose. I want that for our organizations.
Yeah,
Everyone.
me too. Me too. I think that, the rise of social media and the internet and the ability to really examine companies and if their insides match their outsides, if those pretty purpose statements and value statements are being lived or not, that is, leaders are being exposed right, left, and center on the fact that they don't live up to those,
That's
right?
the framed artwork on the wall. Is it really present in the culture, or does it make a nice view on the wall?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that, I mean, this is a much used example, but if you look at Johnson and Johnson's credo statement, I had the good fortune of, having J&J as a client for
Nice.
decades, and I still believe to this day they live to that credo. Why? Because they build it into every process,
Mhm.
every product that they build. It sits on every manager's and employee's desk. It is on their, badges.
Mhm.
It is built into every fabric
Yeah.
of that organization. You can't escape it. And therefore, it gives opportunity for people to talk to one another to say, is that a credo value? Is
Mm.
the decision you're making consistent with our credo? And it's in the narrative every single solitary day, in small and large things, from the person that checks you in. So I think that where companies get lost is they have a nice little purpose statement, but they don't build it into the fabric of the
I
organization.
mean, building on my earlier example at Mayo Clinic, the needs of the patient come
Yes.
first is a core part of every decision, every action, every interaction that goes on in that organ, and you see it, feel it, and hear it constantly there. So
Exactly.
love that. I know you talk about the soft skills. I have two more questions for you. Soft skills, and you rename them power skills. Now I've got a little nudge to make. You're giving credit to a great organization, Udemy, however you pronounce their name.
Yep.
In 2021, I launched a major course called Level Up Power Skills, Influence, Lead, and Develop Yourself Differently. So I'm taking claim for calling soft skills
Good.
skills.
Good for you. Good for you. Listen, everyone can claim that it's as long
No.
as they use them,
Yeah,
right?
I'm joking, but I so
No, I
agree
know.
with that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean, listen to, some of our, greatest leaders today. I mean, certainly Satya Nadella is talking
Mhm,
about empathy everywhere he goes. He actually, I was at a conference and he was being interviewed and he said, human skills are the new power skills.
mhm.
And
Love
he
that.
talks about it in
Mhm,
that regard. If you look at Jamie Dimon,
mhm,
a couple of months ago, I was sorry our book wasn't out at that time, but he was talking about curiosity being the number one skill of a leader. I
mhm,
happen to agree, right? I think that we have to flip the script, right? You people that enter into your organizations, they have great craft. They have
mhm,
great craft. They're great, experts or rising experts in what they do, but that is not who they are.
mhm,
And until we can really understand and be really curious and reward and celebrate who you are
mhm,
holistically, and that is through power skills, we will not see a reversal of terrifying statistics that are leading to real economic issues in our country and in the
mhm.
globe
Yeah.
on trust and engagement. I mean, you know, the lack of engagement, which I attribute to a lack of leadership, is costing us $8.8 trillion a year globally. That's equivalent to Amazon, Apple, and Microsoft combined in revenues a year. Think
And
about that.
With the one organization that tracks that engagement in a major way, Gallup, would come out and
Yes,
say, and you
yes,
know what? 70%, they said there's a causal relationship between lack of engagement and the manager, and they
that's right.
attributed it about the 70% level. Yeah, I actually, you're much more articulate and calm. I think it should be a crime for us not to create these environments. That's a little bit extreme, but it's sad. It's sad. So I have a question, and I suppose it was a little bit dissonant because I'm reading the book, I'm cheering, I'm pumping my fist, and then I get to a quote later on that says, "This is not the time for heroic efforts." Yet on the other hand, there's a quote that says, "The moment calls for bold reimagining of what leadership itself looks like."
Yeah.
I think it is a time for heroic effort. So help me understand where you were going with that. And by the way, I realize how challenging it is for some knucklehead to take a single quote out of your entire beautiful
All
book
good.
and throw it out there.
No, it's all good. I think, listen, we have over invested in personalities, and that's what we mean by heroes.
Okay.
We have elevated individuals to such a status of being a hero when they've really acted
Uh,
horribly, right?
mhm,
So I don't think that we are not crying for a movement around single leaders.
mhm,
We're crying for a movement that starts at the ground up, that starts with a selection of leaders leading differently and having the courage to do that, so that we have this notion of humanity, solving for humanity in the workplace.
mhm.
Because if we solve for humanity in workplace, we solve for the communities in which those workplaces reside. And that requires a movement of bottom up and top down in how we define leadership. And that's why we've written this book and why we feel so passionate about the fact that we need not just one, not just three or four from a certain
Right.
industry. We need a collection of leaders who lock arms with courage to put humans at the center.
Oh, so well said. What a great way to cap things off. So, personal question, and I ask this of every author I interview. What did you learn through the experience, really learn at a deep level from researching and writing this book with Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, boy, I learned a lot. It's hard to pick one, right? Um, I think that for me, this was a culmination of a life's dream, meaning that, I started my career as a social worker.
Hmm.
I wanted to change lives, for every individual, every walk of life. I translated that into a beautiful consulting career and leadership career. For me, it was more a learning about, at this particular time, how dangerous it is not to pay attention to what is going on in terms of the headwinds that leaders are facing. Most people are talking about one aspect of what's impacting a leader, whether that's distributed teams or, AI or market shifts. They're not looking at the totality of these things and the impact, the system of how all of these things come together and the impact of that on humans and our economy. And so what we sought to do and what I learned is that I have even more a sense of urgency because we are at code red in my mind on and in my research, and not just my mind, the research tells us this, of a crisis in leadership. And we must act.
What a remarkable and needed, I'll call it a gift to give to us.
Yeah, thank you.
I want you to preach it and teach it and reinforce it. I'm honored to have had the chance to talk with you about it. I'm inspired by it, and I'll look forward to sharing it as well. Thank you, Christy, and thank you to your co-author, Kelly Monahan, as well.
Well, thank you so much, Art. It was such a pleasure to talk to you today.